So my name is Glory Faleke. I'm a product designer at Web3 Media, where I build blockchain apps and help users onboard to the new web, which is Web3. Previously, I was a product designer at iTechma, a software development company here in Lagos, and I did different things in between. Before then, actually, I did writing, I did web design, doing Shopify, doing WordPress template and website, and it's actually all those things you do before you actually get to the real deal, right? So, and for a lot of people that actually started, let's say 6, 7 years ago, right? One of the challenges we face is the kind of questions they ask us. Oh, what do you do? It's more of like an identity question, right? Like, hey, what do you do? Because right at that period, product design wasn't really like something very common, right? Um, okay, it wasn't something that is really common, and I also had my own fair share of that those periods as well. Whenever I'm in my room trying to make design, trying to finish a prototype, my dad comes behind me and kind of inspect what I'm doing. He asks the question like, "Hey, what do you do? How does this make money? How does this make money for you?" And you can imagine that kind of question. Why? Because you go to university to study something different, and you are doing design, spending 8 hours in your room. And if you come from a background like mine, right, they wonder, oh, why are you sitting 8 hours behind your system? It just doesn't make any sense. So a lot of times they ask this question, and I'm always wondering, how do I give him a very good answer that actually tells him about what I do? So one day I think there was a breakthrough. I told him something. I said, pick your phone, right? Open it, and everything you can see is where I come in. So obviously, I can't begin to tell him, oh, I design user experiences and all that. But from there, he was able to realize, okay, this is an idea of what I do, which is like sort of a breakthrough. So, and that also talks about what a lot of us experienced like 6, 7 years, 5 years ago, when design isn't not as mainstream as it is now, like in terms of product design. So, and some of these experiences, right, is just all about how we started, and there are other tons of things actually about this humble beginnings where there are other things I learned from my dad that actually influenced my design career right on to this moment. For example, he has a very strong eye for quality. And if I say something now, you actually be surprised. Like, he used the wallet for like 20 years. And when he stopped using it, not because it wasn't working or because it wasn't good again, but it was all tattered. There are situations like this that also happen for every one of us, right? In my house, there is a wardrobe that has been existing for like, I don't know. I actually grew up to it and it's still there the last time I went to. There are other things like pots, all those things. But the most important thing is the fact that there was quality in all of how he got on these things, and he would always deny himself of getting some things right because he wants to make sure he's able to derive quality from it. And a lot of times quality is actually tied to time, like the longevity of what you actually get from whatever you buy. And the truth is, design is actually in everything we see around us. You can look at something and say, okay, this is about design. Right from how you're sitting here, yeah, how this all is arranged, how we even got to this place. There is design in everything. And the interesting thing is, with all these things here, there is actually problems as well we're solving. We don't appreciate these problems. We don't appreciate these solutions right now. Why? Because 5, 10 years ago, there has been some people, or 50 or 100 years ago, there are people that have actually like worked on each of these problems. And there is a problem. There's a situation that we are in right now, which is called arbitration, right? Like, we already like get used to some things, and we don't even realize the kind of amount of work that has gone into making sure it is usable for everyone here. All right. So, and like I said, design is in everything around us, and it is also a superpower. Some other things about when I was growing up is that I like to play with things. I go about in the house because I have a lot of free time. I go about in the house. I pick plants. I pick nets. I try to make things. Even though this was different from what I should be doing at that point in time, but the most important thing there is that it felt empowering. I felt like, okay, I could build something from scratches, from patches of things around the wall, around the house. I can pick tools around the house, pick a DVD player, and try to fix it. And I think for some of us, our experiences were also like that, where you are known as the engineer in the house, right? So we all had, all probably had similar experiences like that. So for all designers, or for people like me from a background, we see design as a superpower. And another thing about this is, we see design as a superpower, and the great Stanley said, with great power, comes great responsibility. So we influence how we see the world today, how the world is moving today, the kind of of changes we are seeing in the world today, we are the ones actually influencing it. But we don't realize it because we think, okay, when we face the canvas, we are sitting right inside our room trying to make, draw things in our Figma. We are not changing things. But the truth is, we have the power to influence cultures. We have the power to influence how people see the world around us. Again, for most of us, our childhood was like this. This is a picture of an MP3 player. This is also a picture of a cassette rewinder. So I even had an experience then where I bought an MP3 player. I actually saved up for it, yeah. And when I got it, and I got home, I should have bought battery at the point I got it, but I had no money on me on that day. So when I got home, I plugged in the battery and I found out it wasn't working. That was a problem right there. No matter how you spin it, if you examine it deep down, I was a user at that point in time, and there was a challenge here. We don't realize it again. Why? Because in the present times, when you buy a laptop, for example, when you buy a phone, batteries come with it. It's probably well charged. I could actually tell you a story of how all these things quiet happened. Not like it just, appeared just like that. And that's to tell you the kind of power we need as designers. Designers digitally, designers working on products, physical product as well. I don't know if there are physical product designers. They're like, you work on actual product, you build things physically, like make plants, make structures basically. So this also talks to us as well because we have all those powers. Then we move from this to something like this. We have phones, you have smartphones, we had Sega, you play football on Sega, and you also like black and white TV. And this formed the basis of how we grew up. Like we derive different moments of joy from all these things, even though they were difficult. It was actually difficult to operate some of these things, but we actually enjoyed it all the same, right? Like we picked. I think one of the games on this one was Space Impact, right? Like very interesting game. Maybe Snake Sensor as well. Then this was our first exposure to something digital. We play football on this two specifically. Then black and white television. Oh my! It's like the darling of what you have in your house, right? So now this brings us to the fact that design is between technology and people. Technology is on one side, design is on another side, right? And like Steve Crook said, design usability is about people and how they understand things, right? When you talk about technology as itself, it is not closer to people until design brings it closer, right? And when we talk about usability, we are the center of how people experience products and make lives better out of it, right? And people's experiences can alter their perception of quality. What can we learn from Apple Computer, from Airbnb, from Disney? I was mentioning earlier that before, right? If you buy something, you probably wouldn't get a battery coming with it, or you have to wait for like 5 minutes to charge, or maybe 1 hour. Imagine you are very excited about getting something and you have to charge for like 3 hours before you're able to use it. So when Apple was making products at that period, during the early days of Apple, Steve Jobs noticed this problem. Imagine you could actually not see it as a problem, and that is why a lot of problems in the world in the world today, a lot of scenarios in the world today, you think they are not a problem because you probably don't experience that. When you experience, you think it's a common thing. But that's what design takes. It takes seeing beyond the ordinary, seeing beyond what is close to you. Now, when Steve Jobs was talking was discussing in the company, he said, "How can we make it better that when people get our product, which is MacBook, right? Or I mean, it wasn't MacBook then. Something like this actually. Said, how can they start using it immediately? Every other company was doing it differently. They were doing it in such a way that when you get your product, you have to charge. But Apple made sure they charge it, and when you power it on, you can start using it almost immediately. There's something to learn out there, and that's just how Steve Jobs built the company. Design is how it works, right? Airbnb is a very, very interesting company. Why? Because they sort of created a product out of a niche that is very unique to hotels, right? One of the challenges they faced was the challenge of trust. How do we make sure that people open the privacy of the house to others, right? Like, how do you even see that, okay, you built a property that is very precious and see a guest from anywhere in the world is coming to use a property? So it boils down to trust. And one of the questions they ask themselves is, how can they design for trust? Drilling down into detail, they found out that one of the two ways you can build trust is by sharing. And it's not just by sharing details about your life. So all the things we say about rating, about sharing, about your experiences, And when hosts, share about their house, they give details about how they structure their house. They tell the traveler about the kind of person they are, right? They are sharing details about themselves, and these are the things that build trust for users, for travelers that are traveling around the world. One other thing they were able to do, they did something very very interesting, which I still align with today in the concept of building for trust. When they were still building the product, right, in the early days of Airbnb, they went from house to house. They noticed they were not making sales. They were making, I think, $200 every week, and they wanted to double this sales. They wanted to make more so that they can be sustainable. So what they did was they noticed people were not booking hotels. I mean, booking the apartment, and they noticed that one of the problems they faced was the pictures were not that great. The pictures were not good. So what did they do? They went from house to house, took their own camera, and they were taking pictures of host of apartments and uploading it by themselves. This changed the way Airbnb flowed from that point in time to becoming a multi-billion dollar company. What about Disney? Disney is also a very very interesting company, and there is a lot of things we can learn from how Disney grew from just an idea to what it is now. Right? Disney was had a vision to create a documentary that is so unique from what has been existing. And when they were building it, it actually took a lot of resources. It took a lot of time. It took a lot of energy and a lot of drilling down to the details, giving it more than the physical things. Right? They did over 80 minutes worth of long animation video, and people were asking. In fact, they named the scenario at that point as Disney Foley. And what does it mean? It means they just couldn't believe in what Disney was doing. They saw it as nonsense, as who would sit down in a theater to watch an 80 minutes video animation, a stop motion animation. And what was the process like? They hired over 600 designers, over 600 artists to work on it. They spent they grew way beyond their budget. I think like 10x of their budget. It took a longer time they planned to release the movie. But they were able to achieve this. Why? Because what Disney was so focused on is vision. He was so obsessed about getting a feature-length animation, and actually the feature-length animation is Snow White, what we know today as Snow White, right? And when it was being developed, then it looked like it wasn't going to work. And eventually, when they built it, right, it set up the foundation for what Disneyland is today. They made a lot of money from it, right? And it set up the foundation for what Disneyland is today. People were buying tickets during that time 10x of the original value. There's a lot of things we can also learn from vintage cars, vintage chairs, and castles. Castles is also a very interesting aspect of what happened in the old time. But what can we learn from here? There are three common denominators, which is time, effort, and obsession. As product designers, striving for quality in our design. Three key important factors, which was common to the early days of Airbnb, of Apple, of Disney, is time, effort, and obsession. The founders recognized the impact of spending time on solving the problem at that point in time and making sure that vision is pushed to reality. It also took tons of effort. How is it possible that you combine over 600 designers working on a project? How is it possible to go from house to house in order to take pictures of host apartments and upload it? How is it possible that you drill down into the details of making sure what we experience as MacBook today is got to what we are experiencing today? It took time, effort, and obsession. Being obsessed about your vision of your product, being obsessed about making sure you are able to improve the product to help users to meet their needs. Why? Because that's what we're doing. I mentioned earlier that we have the power to influence the world, to change how the world is, and that is that. And three of the things that can help us is time, effort, and obsession. Being obsessed about what you're doing. The next thing is, how do you set up for quality? Defining your North Star. My partner at Web3D Media said something. He said design is less impactful if you don't have a North Star. Your experiment will lack direction. Prioritizing a goal that drives the most business impact on the product enables all your design choices to move the metrics. You have to have a clear goal of what you want to achieve. You don't just set out to improve your design craft, to get better at what you do, just out of nothing. You have to have a clear direction of what you want to improve, how do you want to go about it, and or else your experiment will lack direction. You have to prioritize your goal and stay focused on that goal in order to achieve what you set out to achieve. The next thing is leadership with clarity. We are leaders in our own spaces, right? And you must internalize this leadership as a product designer. Lead with clarity. you must have that push effort to, get the team in a direction of the vision, in a direction of your goal. You must have a clarity of purpose as to where you're going in your product life cycle. Another thing is a team committed to sweating the details. You personally, as one person or working together with a team, you must have you must be committed to sweating the details. A lot of the good things we see today, they are product of people that work tirelessly to make sure what we have today, and or to make sure like the problems that were existing then are no more existing now. And you can imagine the number of hours they spent in making sure this product come to life. As product designers working on our own or with a team, you must have this focus to say, getting into the details of whatever you're working on to make sure not just things that are very, not just common things, not just things that you can just imagine from your head. You have to make sure like you are committed to sweating the details. Also, a company that prioritizes quality. I'm lucky to work in a company where quality is taken very seriously. And as individuals, as product designers, you must have all these things in your toolkit to ensure that you put quality ahead of whatever you do. Ensure that you put a focus on defining your North Star, leading with clarity, and committed to sweating the details, and also prioritizing quality in everything you do. Again, what quality design craft is not about: superficial aesthetics, inflexibility, and oversimplification. Quality design craft is not about the beauty alone. It's not about how it looks. You must be committed to making sure what you are building is actually solving a problem. It is not about inflexibility. A lot of product designers see design as a tool for expression. Whereas it's not just a tool for expression, but a tool to make their life better, to help users, to solve the problems for users. Another thing is oversimplification. There's a lot of things that can be said about oversimplification, but the most important thing is in your design craft, make sure you are designing with focus on your North Star, with attention to detail, to make sure users can experience moments of delight in the product you're building. Internalizing greatness and the genius within. There's a lot of things you can talk about Einstein. You can talk about Thomas Edison, about Alan Turing. But three things I would want us to take away from these geniuses are these: curiosity, consistency, and courage. You must be curious about why a product is working or what is making a product not work, and how can you make it better. You should also be consistent in your craft. You should also be courageous to go beyond the norm, to push beyond the limit, to see a challenge and say you want to go head on, to tackle it. This is how you can internalize greatness as a designer. For some of us, our life as a designer could be like this. If you want to be a designer that focuses on quality, right? Originality, problems, experimentation, and failure. For some of us, we are at that point where the failure seems like it's small. The problem seems like it's a lot. But when you keep working on it, committed to sweating the details, committed to making sure you are building a product that takes the user from point A to point B, from 0 to 1, you would eventually get there. And this is the question, and what we should ask ourselves as we go on with our daily lives as a product designer. How am I making sure I'm not just building the ordinary, but making sure I'm creating a solution to a problem and people are able to use it. Thank you so much. Thank you. Oh.